we have a good friend of ours and such an inspiring human. Some of you may not know Bobbie because if you haven't been part of the Redkin family, maybe you don't know how important this woman has been to the hair industry. She started quite a while ago as a hairdresser, just like many of you, but then she became a Redkin artist, and she was a Redkin artist for about 15 years. Then she was with the L'Oreal brands for about 20 years, where she held some super, super high level positions within those companies through the education department. And unfortunately, in 2010, she was diagnosed with cancer, which really created a big shift in her world, because at that point she recognized maybe that wasn't the world she needed to continue in, and turned her attention more to holistic healing, because that's what helped her so much. So now Bobbie is a Reiki master. She's a massage therapist. She's a lead trainer. She still works with Redkin occasionally, going out and doing big trainings with them. So she has a huge hand still within the industry, but she's really dedicated so much of herself now to one-to-one coaching, Reiki services, reflexology, chakra balancing, and that's a lot of what we're going to be able to touch on tonight. That's just the mini version of this woman's bio. So please, in the chats, please, big, big welcome for Bobbie-Foster Kelly.
Hi.
Hey.
That was so nice.
Feels like we should have like fireworks and explosions when you come on, right?
Oh, like at the inauguration. That was amazing, huh?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here tonight. We really are super excited to have you on, especially because it's such a perfect story, honestly, of your transition from working very heavily within kind of the, I guess we can kind of call it the corporate hairdressing world,
Yep.
into more of a health and wellness kind of perspective. So talk to us a little bit about that transition from that world into what you're experiencing now.
Well, thanks, Andrew. First of all, what I want to say first is just thank you for having me here tonight, because I'm a big fan of Wellness Wednesdays, and it's been a dream of mine to be on one. So tonight is a dream come true for me. Thank you. And I see a bunch of friends that I know. Hi, guys. And for those of you that I don't know, fantastic to meet you. And I hope you have a great experience tonight as we, as we spend this time together. So I think you're asking me about the transition. Is that what it was?
Yeah, just because I think a lot of people will probably relate to that transition of kind of some maybe some burnout or some high level stuff within the hair industry, but then transitioning into something more around wellness.
Yeah, well, one of the things I think is it doesn't matter what position that we have or where we work. There is always a tendency to spend a lot of time and a lot of energy in that. And what I find, going around and teaching and training is that we just have this, we as hairdressers, I don't know if the whole audience is hairdressers or if there's, but it applies to whatever job you do, is that we have this tendency, we love to make people feel good, and we like to help people. And, we give a lot of ourselves and a lot of our energy to that. And what happens oftentimes is that the more we give to others, the less we have time for or the energy for ourselves. So that's really what kind of became important to me. You mentioned I had a cancer diagnosis in 2010, and it really did change my world, because I knew I was going to get better. At the time, I had a 10-year-old son. I was a single mom. My husband had passed away only 2 years prior to that. So I was like, there's no option in this. I need to figure out what's going on and get myself better. So that's when I really began to study the world of self-care. It was almost, wasn't something I did before. I did a few things. I thought I took care of myself, but not in the way that I learned to. And I think many people can relate to that. We do one thing here or there, once a week, or we take a bath, or we go on a walk, or we do something that we like to do. But what I really wanted to do was just dive in full steam ahead. But it's not easy to leave a good job. There was a lot of security in my corporate position, security financially, not to mention other things. So it took me a while. I did a lot of training, and, thank goodness it was a company that let me do some training and getting ready for and sort of practicing until I left. So I started this journey in 2010, but I didn't leave the company full time until 2016. So
Okay.
that was throughout that time that I really, got my certifications and learned as much as I could about, really about self-care. I think, you and I talked before, I had a lot of my training through hospitals. I just really wanted to give this area that can be somewhat fluffy at times and untangible a little bit at times, a little bit more weight. And coming from the company that I did, that's science-based, it's in my blood, right? So I approached this whole idea of wellness and self-care with, from a scientific place. So I learned a lot about the physical body, through training. I had my Reiki certification done at the hospital with doctors and nurses, massage school, things like that. So yeah, and then I just decided to leave in 2016, opened up my own, my new business called Peace, Love, Balance. And that's how it all started.
Yeah. So awesome. And I mean, type into the chat, yes, if you can relate to, especially as a hairdresser, kind of putting everyone else first and maybe not giving yourself as much attention as you sometimes feel you need to. And Bobbie, I kind of feel like that's one of the things that COVID has been a great teacher right now, because I think for so many people that were in salons and, working those 50, 60-hour work weeks and triple booking, they kind of got, okay, stop. I know just from Wellness Wednesday, just a lot of the comments that we've heard, there's a lot of hairdressers out there that have that same realization that, oh man, I got to really take care of myself. It was a big wake up call. So I think people can relate to not your exact situation, but definitely the things that you were experiencing.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't matter the situation. It matters that the situation happens, right? It's like
Yeah.
when we wake up to something. And, in the years that I've been traveling around and teaching self-care, my classes, my main class is actually called You First, and had a lot of conversations with people because, some people think, no, it's not fair. It's selfish. I can't take care of me first, right? And for a while, I actually thought, well, should I call it Me Too or Me Along With, or, but it's funny that, teaching this class over the years, I never met anybody who didn't want to take care of themselves better and who didn't think that that was important. But when it actually came down to doing it was a whole nother thing. So I think when COVID happened, and there were a lot of other things that happened in this last 11, 12 months,
Yep.
it was like, what sometimes we call, it's like divine intervention from the universe, right? Where we actually were forced into this place of slowing down. Because to me, the number one thing to do as it relates to self-care is to slow down a little bit, right? And that doesn't mean stop living. That doesn't mean stop doing things. That doesn't mean stop working. It doesn't mean quit your job. A lot of people ask me that too. No, I don't advocate that. But there is a part of slowing down, right? That's important for us to take care of ourselves, because when we're busy all the time, we don't even know what's going on with ourselves. We just kind of, fly right past it. So, it's hard to, and last year, what we've gone through these last 11, 12 months, I think have taught us the benefits to some extent of slowing down. And while there were, bad experiences or tough experiences that we all went through, there were some good ones too.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I ask people now is to just, hit the pause button because we're getting back again. We're starting to get busy again. And so it's going to be really easy to forget all those wonderful things that happened that grounded us more, and that helped us to take care of ourselves a little bit more and to slow down a little bit more. So it's just to pause a little bit and remember, and even if you're a note taker or you're a journal person or you're a thinker or in whatever form, it doesn't matter. But what are the things that happened that were so good? I want to keep doing those things.
Yeah.
What might I start doing, or, what even do I want to stop doing? But what are some of those things that really served me and my family and my clients and my friends that I want to keep doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up because that's kind of the risk, right? The risk is that we went through this whole experience and we had that reset button, and the risk is that okay, the vaccine comes and people start getting back to kind of normal life, and especially as hairdressers, we're probably going to have a backlog of clients that maybe didn't get in fast enough. So the risk is we just kind of fly right back into the heat of it and maybe even kind of go harder because we're trying to play catch up. So,
Mhm.
any thoughts on how we continue the lessons that we received and resist the temptation to just go full force back into it?
Well, I think we have to, this is all about making a commitment, I think, to ourselves and then finding a way to stick to it. What does it take? You heard my story. What does it take to actually help make a change?
Hmm.
And I think, even before COVID, as a hairdresser behind the chair, we take on a lot of stuff, right? Clients come in and you're one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And you take that stuff on, take it on, take it on, take it on. I mean, how many times you hear like, I can't wait to get home at the end of the night and just take a shower and get it off of me, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's so true. And so how do we sort of, protect ourselves from that a little bit? Doesn't mean we don't want to stop what we're doing. We love what we're doing and we help our clients. We are so good for them as they are for us. But what I'm hearing a lot from stylists now is that the conversations are even more intense, if that's the right, than they were before. Because this, used to be people would bring in their stuff, but it was everyday things, not to negate any important things that happen in clients' lives. But what everybody in the entire world experienced last year, they're bringing it in, right? So what we're
Mhm.
hearing now, it's even more important to keep that promise to ourselves and to take care of ourselves so that we can help them. They feel better when they leave. We want to feel better when they leave, and we don't want to feel worse than they leave, and we don't want to feel worse at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, who do we go home to? Other people that need us as much, whether it's our partners or our spouses or our children or our pets or whatever it is. So we have to decide if it's important enough to us, I guess, to maintain our spirit and our strength and our energy,
Mhm.
so we can carry it all through the day. And then when we go home, and it means not always going home and the first thing that we do to sort of get it off of us is open the liquor cabinet. And trust me, nothing wrong with a glass of wine, I'm all in for that. So I'm not saying, but there are other ways to help ourselves stay at a nice, strong, healthy level, because you know what, we're going right back in the next day too,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And to that point, I think that this is in some ways, I think that COVID kind of set some new precedents for us of some things that are going to carry forward. For example, totally different vein, but for a long time, we knew that digital education was going to be a big deal. Well, COVID kind of accelerated things so fast that what we thought was going to happen a few years from now kind of got condensed down in, and I feel like it kind of created new precedent. So I I think that there's almost this perception that as we start to figure COVID out, that these things that are putting us into the caution fatigue, or they are kind of putting us into that sense of anxiety or urgency, all of a sudden they're going to disappear. And I'm not sure that that's going to be the truth, because I feel like there's kind of that sense now that is probably going to carry for a little bit of kind of focusing on those challenging things and the hurtful things, and and the news is just going to keep being the news. So I know one of the things you kind of wanted to bring forward tonight is how do we manage that caution fatigue and not let us not let it take us over.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think probably the biggest thing that I want to say is that maybe the worst thing we could do is to put pressure on ourselves to do a certain something or to not do a certain something. Okay.
Okay.
So what we need to do is give ourselves permission to find our own pace and to, you know, even if it's only one thing we do a day that's different than what we were doing before, it's better than what we were doing before. And if we try to do too much, I don't know if you've ever, you know, taken on too much, and what happens is you can only take it for so long and then you stop it. So if we want this to be, you know, resilient, if we want to be resilient and if we want this to be long lasting, we've got to, you know, take a little bit at a time and just find one or two things that we can do, you know, that make us feel good. What we don't want to do is put pressure on ourselves. It's, you know, the word pressure is synonymous for stress. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
When we, you know, people ask all the time, I love to talk about stress and the effects that stress has on our body. Maybe we'll have a little bit of time to talk about it. But, you know, people go like, well, how do I know if I feel stressed? Because, you know, I'm always stressed. And you know what it is if you can feel, you can feel it, you know, you can, if there's a pressure to do something or to not do something, that is an indication that there's some sort of stress going on in your body. So what can you do? First of all, is just start really paying attention to when you're feeling a little pressure. Maybe it's a little bit of tension. It could be an emotional pressure. It could be a physical pressure. Pay attention to it and then do something versus forget, you know, just blow it off, because that's what we've been taught to do for so long. Is just, you get signals. We're smart. We know when our body's telling us something. We just don't always listen to it, you know? So the message is listen to it. Your body will tell you what it needs. When something's going on, it'll always come out physically. You know, that's like its last, you know, spirit's last stop is to let it show up physically.
Yeah.
And that's the time to really just pause for a minute and go, okay, what's going on and what can I do? And there's some really simple, easy, quick things you can do to, you know, get through it versus, I was going to say something really corny, that you can get through it instead of poo-pooing it. You know, just don't ignore it, you know, listen to it. And yeah, it's not hard. It's simple really, but it is hard. How about that? That's a better way of saying it.
I think that's perfect. And thank you for saying that too, because I think that puts it almost gives us permission to understand that when we have these conversations, sometimes I feel like you can almost mistake these kind of conversations for suggesting that this stuff is easy, because yes, it is simple, but we also know that it's not easy. So I love that distinction, because it takes it takes energy and it takes focus to change those habits. You know, one of the things that we were taught through coaching is that it can be like 90 to 95% of your day is controlled by the basal ganglia, this old primitive part of the brain where it's just pattern, and it's your body's natural resource to do that, because it's protecting itself and it's protecting its energy. So the only time this kind of newer part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, kicks into gear is when we have to make important decisions, when we're forced to make important decisions. But the prefrontal cortex is the part that can say, actually, I want to do something different here. I want to experience something different. I can actually make decisions. And so it's really easy, especially as busy people, busy hairdressers, or whatever work you're doing out there. But it's really easy to get into a place that you don't have the time, you don't have the energy or the focus left to make the changes we want to make. So yes, they're simple changes, but there's a reason they're not easy. The body doesn't necessarily make it super easy. So what are some of the things that you do or that you help facilitate with people that do help to make those shifts and to shift how we handle these things?
Okay, thanks. Well, first thing, I'm going to say it again. I said it once already, but I'm going to say it again. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. You know, so this isn't about I'm good at this, or I failed at this, so I'm not going to do it again. Just give yourself permission to give it a little try, do a few things that make you feel good, you know, and keep what you like and let go of what you don't like. There are so many sources out there that write prescriptions for self-care. And I just Ooh, I think I just got a little worked up about that because I don't believe, if you look at if you look at the first part of self-care is what? It's self. Nobody else can tell me what myself needs or what myself wants or what's going on with myself, right?
Yes.
And that's another thing that we have a tendency to listen to other people versus listening to ourselves. We ask advice all the time. It's okay to ask advice. So don't, but when we find ourselves constantly, have you ever asked for advice and somebody's giving you advice and you've done it and it didn't work out so good? And
I
you're
think
like,
that's
and
happened a few
here's
times.
what you
Yeah.
say to yourself: I knew I shouldn't have done that. Right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
we listen to ourselves. That's when all the magic happens because our soul, our spirit, our body, our soul, our spirit, our body, it knows. And if we just listen to it, so I think, there's a couple of things. It's great to start some rituals. I think most important is to start your morning in a certain way. And it just depends on how much time you have. And it depends what you like to do, but to start your morning quiet and to try and get into a habit of not, as soon as the alarm goes off. I'm lucky enough that I work in a world now where I don't have to set an alarm, so I wake up when I wake up. But it's funny because you still wake up at the same time
Yeah.
pretty much all the time. But instead of when you wake up grabbing your phone first to check and see what happened, is there something else you can do for a minute in that moment? When you first wake up and you still remember your dreams a little bit and you're not really planning yet what's going on in the day. You haven't got to your to-do list yet, or it's this magical moment of awakening in the morning that if you can just stay in that moment for as long as you can, even if it's only a moment, and just give yourself some peace, take a few deep breaths, which is something else I'd love to talk about, in a few minutes too. Andrew, I think we could have a couple of these sessions. But start something in the morning where you just start your day at a quiet pace, because you'll find if you start your day quiet, that will lend itself through the rest of the day. If you've got time to meditate, and there's so many theories about meditation too, you can literally meditate for a minute and have benefit from that. If you've got 15 minutes, awesome. If you've got 30 minutes, awesome. If you've got an hour, awesome. But most of people don't often have that time. So take a little quiet time in the morning. And then I would say, if, we can get back to what you do throughout the whole day, because that's our go time. But the same thing at night, try and disconnect yourself a little bit before it's time to go to sleep, because one of the most important things you can do for yourself is to get a good night's sleep. During the sleep is when your body restores itself, it heals itself, it repairs itself, it prepares itself. So if you can get yourself ready for a good night's sleep, and the word gratitude is used a lot as well, but it's one of my very favorite things to do. And I lay in bed at night before I go to sleep, I just go through this gratitude list. And sometimes I'm thankful for the things that I have. And oftentimes it's more than a gratitude list. It's a celebrate my wins list for the day.
Nice.
Because I think one of the other things we do is we do so many things during the day, and all we think about when we go to bed are what?
What are we going to do tomorrow?
What are we going to do tomorrow? And what didn't we get to today?
Right. Yes.
What if we think about all the things we did get to today? So sometimes when I do this, I think, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to have much to celebrate today. And then I start and I'm like, whoa, and even if it's something just really small, it's like a little check, how good it feels to check something off your to-do list. And you go to bed with that gratitude and with that feeling of accomplishment for the day. And it sets you up for a good night's sleep. You wake up from that sleep and you get yourself started for the next morning for the day. So those are just a couple things that, and you make your own, whatever feels good in the morning and what feels good at night. Because I started to say there's a million sites you can go to that tell you how to do your own self-care. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you create your own self-care regimens and routines and do what feels really good to you.
Yes. And I put a fist in the air when you said that, because I'm so with you there. I'm so tired of people telling us how we're supposed to run our day, because if there's one thing that you guys have all experienced as hairdressers, is everyone is so unique. Everyone is so individual. And to have this, like, okay, at 6 a.m., you have to wake up, you have to put on your running shoes, you have to run 6 miles, you come home, you eat a peanut butter sandwich, it's like, it's so outlined. And it's like, no, hang on, back up. I don't even like running. I hate peanut butter. So how sustainable is this suggestion anyway? So I think you're so on point. It is so personal. And that's why I think hiring someone like you as a coach is so important, because then you support people in discovering that for themselves instead of just preparing this list of, okay, here's what you do. And before we get too far, I just want to connect with a couple of these comments because there's some great stuff coming in. Tara, when you were talking about making it personal, you're allowed to start messy. Don't judge yourself. Just try some stuff. And Maria mentioned like trusting our intuition, which that, Bobbie, I know that we could probably even do a whole episode on just intuition, because we're so up here all the time. We're so head-brained, and we don't trust that internal voice so much. Jose is saying, loving the conversation. Beth, you stop setting an alarm and you wake up at the same time, but it feels better. In those quiet moments to check in with your body, mentally prepare for the day. Dr. Joe Dispenza has been talking a lot about brain frequency. Yes, right at that first moment when we first wake up, we're still coming out of that theta brainwave, that kind of slower brain frequency that we're in during sleep. So we're in that close, we're still close to that kind of dreamlike state where you were saying that's where we typically remember the dreams. So it's a great place to anchor that kind of stuff. But just wanted to connect on a couple of the comments that come in, and thank you guys so much for keeping the comments and stuff coming in. And if you do have any questions, make sure to throw them in the comments. I'm gonna do my best to keep tabs on them and throw them Bobbie's way. But take us into some more of your suggestions. You said that there were some things throughout the day too that we could be doing.
Yeah, you know what? Before we do that, I see Danielle. Her comment says you were our last in-person class last February in Baltimore. There you are. And I just want to say that was my last in-person class too. That's when it all hit, right? I had some classes scheduled in March that never ended up happening. So, hey, Baltimore, that was my last one too. I think, during the day, there's a couple things that I would suggest. And I think I've said it already, but during the day is our opportunity to check in on ourselves, right? You can do it quietly, you can do it loudly, you can do it by yourself, you can do it behind the chair when you're with your client. No, sometimes, nobody really has to know, but checking in with yourself and seeing, okay, where am I at right now? How am I feeling? And one of the ways to do that is, there's a couple of exercises. I'm trying to think, Andrew, what would be the best way to do it? Because I think, breath is the most important thing that we can do to sort of help ourselves relax, to relieve stress, to relieve anxiety. When we breathe, it actually sends oxygen to our brain. And then our brain sends a signal to our body, which activates part of our autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the part that helps us to slow down and calm down. So there's two parts. I'll try to do this top line-ish, but there's two branches to this autonomic nervous system. There's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And the sympathetic is that's the fight or flight. We all know what that is, right? That's when our, cortisol gets released and we're, that's fight or flight, right? And that happens a lot. And sometimes that's okay. The key is we don't want to stay in fight or flight for too long, because all of those hormones coursing through our body, and what happens is our body, other parts of our body, in order to give ourselves the boost that we need to do whatever it is we need to do, go fight the tiger or whatever, lift the car off of whatever it is everything needs to go to that place to give that place the energy. So other parts of our body begin to sort of slow down and shut down, things like digestion, other things that aren't imperative in that moment. So we don't want to stay there for too long, because that's when things can start to, begin to show up physically. The parasympathetic nervous system is what I talked about, what's activated when we do deep breathing. There's lots of different kinds of breath, but that part, the parasympathetic nervous system, it's the opposite of that. It's so if sympathetic is the gas pedal in the car, parasympathetic is the brake in the car. And that's what we call like rest and relax, or rest and recover. So it's important that when we catch ourselves in that, that we recognize that and just slow it down. And you know what? It's almost like, you got to be kidding me. It's that easy. It is. Take
Yeah.
breath. Again, breath, we take in oxygen, and it sends the oxygen to our brain, which sends it to our body and tells us to slow down. So whenever we're feeling a little bit of angst, or whenever we're feeling a little bit of nervousness, or we're feeling a little bit of tension or anxiety or stress or whatever it is, just pause and breathe. Okay.
Mhm.
So, when we're in the salon, that could show up in the way of working with a client that, I know most of our clients are just perfect and loving, and we don't have, but every once in a while, there's one. I don't think I've ever been to a class where they go, okay, what can I spray or burn or what to get the energy from that client out of here? You know what?
Yeah.
You can do all those things. Again, many more things we can talk about, but just taking a moment for yourself to breathe can get rid of all of that and take you back into a place where you're ready for your next client. And it's only fair for them, and it's only fair for you, right? To get yourself back into that place. So breathing, and we're talking about deep breathing. There's lots of different types of breathing. If they're, for those of you that do yoga, you've learned lots of different types of breathing. There's literally hundreds of different types of breath. So I'm not going to promote one type of breath specifically with a name. There's like, 4, 7, 8, there's all these different types of breathing. But what I would like to recommend is just breathing as deep as we can from our diaphragm, which is this little muscle that's just below our lungs. So we typically have the habit of either breathing from our diaphragm. That's it. That's right where it is. From breathing from there, from our diaphragm, or from breathing higher up from our chest. And usually if we're breathing from our chest, it's a little bit more shallow. Yeah, look, your shoulders even go up. And if you really begin to pay attention, sometimes you'll catch yourself. I do this too. So, the teacher is the student, my own, is I'll go, wait a minute, you're not even breathing right now. Like, you ever just sort of catch yourself holding your breath and you didn't even know you were holding your breath? You're like, whew. Yeah. What was I thinking? And whatever triggers it happens all the time. It's sort of a preservation mechanism to kind of like clench up and hold our breath like that. And we want to try and recognize when that's happening, and then just do a couple things. So if you want to, is it okay if we just go through it real quick and have an experience to?
Please do, because before you start, I'm just going to kind of bring up this question from Francesca, because I think this will help you, Francesca, because just from the little bit I've been reading, a lot of what people are experiencing with the masks is kind of the illusion of the restriction of breath. And so what happens is we put this thing over our face, and so we start to breathe differently. We're not actually taking the full breaths in and out. So I think actually practicing what Bobbie's going to take us through here might actually help you. So
yeah, I think so too. And I think it just dawned on me when you said that there was, as we learned so much throughout the year, there was for a long time this, this myth that breathing with a mask on was harmful for us, because the carbon dioxide that we expelled said, it said that we were breathing that back in. And just know that I think by now we all know that, but I'm just saying it again. That's not the case. So if you want to, if you just take one hand and put it on just below your belly button, so on your stomach or on your belly, but just underneath your belly button, just put one hand there, take your other hand and just put it on your chest. And then I want you to just take a few deep breaths, and I'll count it out for you. If you can inhale to the count of 3, if you can inhale to the count of 5, whatever's comfortable for you. But we're just going to do that a couple times, and then so I'm going to get quiet for a minute, and then I'll jump back in to say what we're actually looking at or feeling or doing. Okay, so just take a deep breath in through your nose, and let it out through your mouth. And as you're doing that, I just want you to notice, which hand do you feel rising, or not actually rising, but sort of pushing out. So you'll typically feel one hand, either the one that's on your, down at your belly, or the one that's on your chest will be sort of pushing out or expanding. Which one is it that you feel pushing out. And if it's the one that's on your belly, that is an indication that you are breathing from your diaphragm, which is a much deeper breath. It's a little bit more forceful. It has more oxygen that is, rising up to, give yourself a little bit more clarity. We're trying to get oxygen all the way up to the brain. If you were feeling the hand that was on your chest, pushing out, that tells you that you're probably breathing a little bit more shallow, and more in the chest area or from this, center lung area. And what we want to try and do is get in the habit of breathing from deep. So breathing from our diaphragm. Most people tell me that, and I don't want you to freak out if you were breathing from, I don't know if I was just going to say good stomach, chest, that we're all over the place. And that's always what happens. Either way is okay. So what I definitely don't want you to do is to feel bad if you're breathing from your chest. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Probably didn't even know that you were doing that before right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but there is an opportunity, knowing that, to begin to practice breathing from deeper. And most people tell me that once they breathe from their diaphragm, once they have that experience, the body just sort of picks that up and does that innately. And then you don't even have to really think about it anymore. So if you were breathing from your diaphragm, that's awesome. Keep doing it. Good deep breaths. If you were feeling that more in your chest area and you're breathing from your chest, just practice taking a deeper breath. Keep your hand on your belly so you can feel it. And, it's not hard to do. You'll do it, just try it a few times. And once you have the experience of breathing deep like that, again, your body will sort of acclimate itself, because it's the way it wants to breathe. It wants that deep breath that pushes the air all the way up. So that's something that you can do all day long. And, I don't know if I finished this thought earlier or not, but when I was talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, is that breath triggers that and automatically slows us down. So when you have an experience during the day where maybe it was a client that things didn't go right, or maybe you just had a heavy conversation with your favorite client. Right now, all the stuff that we're going through, they're going through. Oh my gosh. I mean, people are having to homeschool, they're working, they're masking up, they're, the political climate that's going on, all the socioeconomic, there's just so much, right? So if there is, whenever there's anything that whether it's a conversation with a client, whether it's a body ache, could be from just holding the blow dryer too long in one place, could be from holding your shears. You can watch one of Andrew's videos that show you exactly how to hold your shears for longer lasting, carpal tunnel, all that stuff that happens. Our legs, our knees, our hips, all of those things. Pay attention to that. And when you do that, just stop for a minute and do some breaths. And you can do a breath. You can do some deep breathing. Even if you only get 5 of them in, if you only get 3 of them in, you can do it while you're still standing there behind the chair with your client there. And that deep breathing, that in itself, just begin to pay attention to what happens when you take a few moments to do some deep breaths, and what the effect that has on whether it's this stuff that's going on, or whether it's something physical in your body that's going on.
For sure. The other benefit of breath too is, guess what you guys all just did as she took you through that breathing exercise? You meditated, because one of the ways that they teach meditation is single point focus. And when you're doing that breath work, you typically are in a single point focus, because you're focusing so deeply and so specifically on the breath that, guess what? You just practiced meditation too. Cool, right?
Totally. And you know what? It's when you're focusing on your breath, you can't, the busy mind, all of this stuff, that can't happen at the same time.
Right.
So it's another thing I didn't, talk about that as a trigger or as a need, but whenever your mind starts to go, we all have that voice, that little voice that just talks to us all the time. And sometimes you just want to go, shut up. Sometimes I do just say, shut up. But that breathing will also help, if you're focusing on your breath, that can't be happening at the same time too, which is really a big part of what meditation is all about as well.
Yeah. Something that hit me so hard with Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, his book, he talked about how the head brain, our kind of analytical brain, it primarily lives in the future and in the past, that it doesn't actually operate super well if we're completely present. So one of the best ways to control that hyper analytical over analytical brain is to get back into presence.
Mhm.
Breath work is just such a fantastic way to get ourselves back into that present moment.
Yeah, that's another good way of knowing if we are present or not. Because I get a lot of questions about that. I don't know if I'm
Mm.
present, like I'm here. So,
Does that
what
mean I'm
does that
present?
mean if I'm present? But I think what you just said um, is the marker for knowing. Like if I am thinking about what happened, or if I'm thinking about what can happen, past and future, then I know that I'm not here, right? And breath, just a few moments of breath will get you right back to here,
For sure.
which is where all the good stuff happens.
That's the truth. It's
If
the
we could
only
only
place
stay
that it
there,
can happen.
I have not learned that. If I could just stay there all the time.
That is, I think, one of the loftiest goals on the planet is to just be present 24 hours a day. And I think that there's very few people on this planet that I've experienced that, like, I think when you see Thich Nhat Hanh do his interviews and stuff, you're like, yeah, that dude's present 24/7. Like there's not even an option anymore for him.
I don't know. If you ask him, I think he might tell you something a little bit different, right? Because we
That's
are all
true.
students. We all are all students as
So
well.
true.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the other things that COVID taught, not COVID itself taught us, but the COVID time, right? Is we found ourselves being a lot more present than we may have before. And it's such a gift that, we may not have even known until we found ourselves, because it's, when you're, there's a lot of examples. Maybe you can throw in a couple as well, Andrew. Think of some things, because it's different for everybody's life. But if you have small children and or your pets, when you're doing something with them, you're forced to be present. You can't do what you're doing with that person or that pet or that thing if you're not there, right? And that's when you experience, there's so much joy of being in that space right there. And when we're busy all the time, we just don't often have the time to be here now.
I'd love to ask you guys if you wouldn't mind type in the chat. What are the things that you do? Is it spending time with your kids, hanging out with your pets, taking a hike? What things do you do that you find yourself so just completely centered in the moment? And like you said, Bobby, I think that's those moments that we actually experience what true joy is, because it's you're so present, you're just there, and that's where that pure joy lives. So pop it into the chat. Let us know. I'd love to kind of hear from you guys. What are those things that you do that puts you really into the moment?
I see Tara just says, for me, when I'm present, everything else melts away.
Hmm. And Tara's saying that when she cuts hair, she's in the moment.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Francesca is saying for her it's working out. Jamie is saying knitting, hanging with pets. Nice. Ooh, I'm with you, Caitlin. I love just taking a walk. That's one of
Me
my
too.
favorite things too.
Me too.
Spending time in nature. Yes. Oh, I like this one too.
I like all of them. So far, I'm in on all of them.
And I love how much diversity we're getting to here,
Mhm.
Bobby. Like
Yep.
everyone has their own thing. And this goes back to your point of just each person, it has to be individual because it can't just be this specific plan because each person has their own thing. Katie's saying yoga. Daniel's listening to music. Danielle. Deanna saying yes in music.
Hmm.
Cooking. I'm with you. Man, that's one of my favorite things. Like if I have a pretty hard day, sometimes if I'm exhausted, I'm like the last thing I want to do is go down in the kitchen. But for most days, the way I love to kind of clear my head, go down and put some music on, cook dinner. There's something about that. Pour myself a glass of wine. Jose's saying working out in the mountains. Phone older adults. Oh, no way. That's so cool, Layla.
That's awesome.
Yes. Love it. Anna, skiing. I think action sports a lot of times is that riding a motorcycle for me. That's a place that I'm just so present. So what is it for you, Bobby?
Well, there's a lot of those things that I like to do. I think the point, you know, the I guess what I was thinking as I was listening to all of those is, find those things that give you joy like that.
Hmm.
Those are the things that feed your soul. That's your self-care, prescribed by you for you, so back to the what makes everyone else, not makes everybody else feel present or feel, taken care of. It's just not the same for everybody. So find those things that, you know, find those things that make you feel good. And you know what? Do those things more often. Just give yourself permission to do those things more often. It's okay. It's good to feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love nature. I have a beautiful backyard that is all wooded with a creek, and I have lots of animals that come in. And that is one of the things that every morning I wake up after I do my thing and I rip open my curtains and I look to see, like, who's out there today, what's going on out, and yeah, I love to be out there. I love to be out in nature. And, I live in Michigan, so I've got 4 seasons. So that backyard changes dramatically 4 times a year, so there's some times where it's just all green and you can't even see the creek back there. And then, like, now it's the game I play in the morning is, because there's snow on the ground, I look at the tracks and try to guess, who came to visit last night, or I never know. I kind of sort of think I know them, but I don't know if I know them. Anyway, that makes me happy.
Awesome. I love it. Before we run out of time, the one area I do want to kind of connect with you on, because of especially our conversation that we had around Reiki and the chakra centers and stuff, I kind of want to talk about energy, because breath is such an accessible point, because everyone can quickly feel it. So I think sometimes when we start to talk about energy work, like you said, sometimes it can start to feel a little fluffy, a little hippy dippy, woo woo. But I mean, you studied Reiki in a hospital. So do you mind if we kind of shift gears and talk a bit about, like, energy work?
Sure. Energy work, like, do you want to talk about the chakras? Energy centers?
Well, so maybe can we talk a bit about the Reiki stuff? Because I think that, especially since you did that through the hospitals, that might be a good starting point. Because I think, again, sometimes people think, well, Reiki, that's just where, like, you hold your hands over people, right?
Mhm.
Like, what's that do?
Yeah. So I'm just going to try and figure out how. There's 3 things that I want to talk about that are sort of interrelated. So I'm going to try and figure out how to do them. One is a lot of what we've been talking about, actually, which is paying attention to what's going on in our body, and feeling the areas. One of the things I like to do in classes is, Danielle, you'll probably remember this from our class, is to do a body scan. Because a body scan, you sort of close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that, but you're paying attention to all the areas of your body as you sort of scan down. And maybe another time, Andrew, we could go more into that if that works. But that's an opportunity for you to begin to feel where something's a little bit off. And we can call that energy. Because energy can be constricted in the body. Energy can be excessive in the body. Energy can be deficient in the body. So the whole idea, the game, it's not a game, but is to recognize where there are areas that need attention, energy attention. Again, we either might have too much of it, we might not have enough of it, we might just be certain, totally balanced in that area. So, when I learned Reiki through the hospital, one of the other things I learned is that there are organs and systems and glands that are associated with each one of the energy centers that are in our body. So whenever we feel something's off, it can, in a certain area, it can also be an indication that, there could be something physically going on, right? So it's like heads up that there might be something happening in that area. So a lot of it is about just really paying attention to that. Reiki is energy balancing, and it really just gives an opportunity for us to create balance all through our body. We've got, 7 major centers through our body where energy flows. And with Reiki, even though we do focus on other areas of the body, what it does is helps just to quickly align the energy that's in that area. So oftentimes people feel, like they have more energy. We're talking about a different kind of energy. I'm going to just stop for a second, because I think I'm trying to cover an hour's worth of stuff in 2 minutes. And what I'd rather do is make sure we get the essence of it, and we can always go more another time, right?
Okay. Yes.
So let's just talk about what energy is first in the body. Okay. Because I can, talk about these centers and things, but there's this, it's called subtle energy. And this is what our bodies are made from. If there's anybody out there who studied quantum physics or anything like that, yeah, I know, I had a feeling, we are everything is made of energy, from, the minuscule, for every atom that it, forms a molecule that, becomes something, soft, flexible, hard, it's all made of energy. And so first of all, we understand that we ourselves, our bodies, our entire bodies are made of energy, and it's either fluid or it's not, or it can get stuck and become hard. Right. And that's exactly what happens when an illness, or a disease happens in the body, is that energy got stuck. Now, I'm not saying this to scare anybody. I actually went to this gypsy in New York one time, and she freaked me out. It was before I knew any of this stuff about, I was like, oh no, I'm going to, for sure, I'm going to die. I've got to put crystals under my pillow and all of this stuff. No. Don't go there. But when you do Reiki, you literally can feel the energy. And Reiki is the word Reiki, it's actually, Rei is universal energy. Mm-hmm. Universal energy, and Ki is our own personal energy. So we've got the energy happening in everything, everywhere around us, and then we have our own personal energy. And Reiki is actually bringing universal energy into the personal space to help align and to heal that. So, and it's very subtle. So it's one of those things that you can't really touch it. So you might not understand or know that that everything is flowing. Every cell is replacing itself every moment of the day. Our red blood cells, our white blood cells, they're renewed constantly. So everything is moving. So what we do with Reiki is we just, help to bring that universal energy into the body and help alignment. You can feel energy if you want to, start to just get a little bit more in touch with what's going on in your body. But, there's another really simple, easy exercise that you can, if you just take your hands for a minute, rub your hands together, just rub your hands. You maybe do a little shaking like that. What you're doing, you're just going to get some energy flowing, rub them back together again, go like that. And then just take your hands and put them together like this, and start to just move them slowly apart, and see if you can feel something happening in between the two palms of your hands. And that's the energy that that's the subtle energy that our body is made of. And you can, continue to push your hands apart further, see how long it takes you until you don't feel it, push them back in again. You can actually make like energy balls with, then, sort of keep that in there. But if you're feeling something, you're feeling that subtle energy, now you had an opportunity to actually feel it. And if you want to put in the chat, if you felt it, now that is what's going on in your body at all times, right? And just again, know that every energy center that's in the body is associated with organs and glands that are in the body.
Yeah, that was awesome. Actually, I definitely could feel it, and you're getting tons of people popping in saying, yes, definitely can feel it.
Oh,
and
good.
That's a great practice, honestly, because to people that are like, oh, I don't know about this stuff, it's like, okay, well, here's a quick way to feel it.
Yeah. If you don't want to read that quantum physics book, which is a little bit harder, but
yeah. And from a quantum physics standpoint, it is so cool to realize that this thing that feels solid is actually almost entirely empty space.
That's right.
Put that in your pipe and smoke
That's right.
it.
You know, the fact that
That's
that it
crazy.
moves, that it's moving, you know, it's hard to comprehend that, you know, even when I say like a hard surface, you know, that it, you know, is actually fluid is really interesting. So the opportunity we have is to realize that our bodies, even though our bodies are solid, you know, they're not, they're fluid, and
Mhm.
they're constantly, everything is moving and regenerating and renewing itself, which is, you know, also sends so much hope, because it's like no matter what's going on today in this body, tomorrow it's going to be something different, and even next, you know, in the next hour or in the next, you know, day, something else could be different.
Yeah.
Hope,
Yeah,
look, I want to read
I
the
can't
prompt.
remember what it was, but it's I mean, it's within seconds or even a smaller amount of time. Basically, your body is a new body because of how quickly everything is regenerating, which
Mhm.
I think that's so cool that if you think about that principle of the quantum physics, where this is just all just electrical impulses happening all around us, and the fact that it's constantly replacing itself, that means that I have a lot more potential to change my body, probably in a much quicker way than I ever thought possible.
Yeah, a lot of power to do that. You definitely own the power to create health and really well-being. One of the things that I also did when I was going through my my cancer treatments, you know, in the integrative medicine department at the hospital, which is where I was introduced to Reiki. I learned something called guided imagery, and I had a session with the person who had headed that you know, area up, and she created a recording specifically for me and what my needs were.
Mm,
And every night before I go to bed, I would, you know, it's guided imagery, so it's, you know, you literally think about, and I would focus on my thymus, which is where my red blood cells would, you know, are generated from, and I would look at, you know, I would visualize, you know, the cancer cells and the white blood cells, and, you know, I I literally believe that my focus on that and my intention on that really helped to, you know, cleanse all that junk out of there and help to make me whole again. So there is a lot of we have a lot of power to heal ourselves, and you know, breath work is a great way, you know, interesting way to do it. Reiki is a great way to do it, and Reiki can be done in person. Reiki can be done distance, because energy is, there's no bounds to it. Um, so yeah, it's we have a lot of power to maintain our health and our well-being.
for sure. Yeah. Bobby, this was so incredible. And like you said, there's so many things that I feel like we could dive into so much deeper. So we will definitely have you back.
Oh yeah,
And on the next one, maybe we'll choose like a specific thing that we can focus
it never
on so I
happened.
don't
It
run
never
you
happened.
all over the place. I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. Squirrel. Hey, let's talk about this.
That, you know what, it always happens. Maybe we can get some comments on whether we need to focus more. I think it's okay. I think we go where we need to go, right? But
Yes.
we can do that if we want to just pick one thing. Sure, we'll do that.
We'll try our best. So y'all, thank you guys for your comments and staying tuned in. Thank you so much, Bobby, from all of us here at Zambia. I know Beth was super excited to have you here. I was too, of course. And Sammy and the whole team, we just want to thank you so much for being here with us. Guys, if you are not tuned into Bobby, please follow her at Peace Love Balance. That's on Instagram, right?
Mhm.
And are
All
you
my
on
channels
Facebook
are
as well?
balance.
Sorry, are you on Facebook as well?
Facebook, YouTube, all my channels are Peace, Love, Balance. So you can find, yeah,
Perfect.
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah. And she does offer one-to-one coaching. And like she mentioned, you can actually experience Reiki from distance, from a Zoom session or from a phone session. So if you're interested, definitely go check her out. We just love having her here. So thank you so much, Bobby. We appreciate you, and we'll definitely get you back on here soon.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And to everybody who took time to join us tonight, thank you.
Absolutely. And to all of you out there in the Samvia community, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you. Our hearts are just filled with gratitude for this incredible community and just how open you all are to this kind of content, because we believe that the more that we as hairdressers carry this kind of wellness mindset forward, the more that we get to affect our communities. So thank you so much for being dedicated to your own wellness so that you can help the community.